Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of the DeFi design experience. I'm Andrei Ponivesk, and I'll be taking you through a few episodes of design in DeFi. So a bit about myself, I've been working in the DeFi space for over a year and a half now. And most of the work that I've been doing was like working with my clients and designing different protocols for them. And part of this process was just me perfecting the way we approach design throughout design sprints or just throughout different processes. And it came to me like after all this time that it would be really interesting if I share the knowledge that I have with everyone. And I thought it was a good time to do this. So I was thinking of putting together a few episodes where I go through, what are the different design patterns, how do you onboard users, maybe go through a few platforms and do design reviews, or maybe, have conversations with users from different industries, different topics, but everything would revolve around design, mainly in DeFi. So I'm going to take you through some approaches that we've been doing and what we've discovered throughout the process. What are the things that made us understand which are the components that are scalable, which are the flows that you should be using, and hopefully this will speed up your process. So we can go through it and we can start. I think it would be really good to start with inputs, because inputs are quite important. So there's so many different ways to do inputs. And if we go to, these are 3 different approaches that I've seen in different protocols. This is token sets, this is Alpha Homora, and here we have Zapper. We can look at Alpha Homora, like what do they do? Like they have here the input, they added, and then they have 3 different options here. They set the max, a half, or a quarter. Then we have Alpha Homora. They just have the input here, option to just set 1 max. Then we have Zapper. We can see Zapper uses the selector on the left side, and then they have max on the left side, and then they have the input on the right side. So you can see like everyone does it differently, but in the end, like, how do you know that what you're doing is actually scalable? How do you know that, you're using the right thing? Sometimes you don't know, it depends on, I would say that it depends a lot also on your platform. It depends on your needs, right? But I do feel there could be one way to do it for most of the protocols and being able to scale that up. So we can go here, and this is what we like to use, and this is what we've been using at our design agency for a while now, this type of input. So this type of input has 4 different components. It has the amount here, it has the placeholder, so the amount is the label, then it has the placeholder, and then you can see the selector for the token, drop down, and then you would be able to set the max. You can see that this is a bit different than the previous example I've showed you. And why we want to do this and set the max here is because by clicking directly here, you don't need an extra button here like you've seen at Zapper, for example, or the other platforms. You can just click here, set the max directly here. And the cool thing is that this also allows us to actually add space for a tooltip, which the new user hovers over it, and they get more information on that, which is actually pretty cool. So why we like this type of input is because this type of input is actually very scalable. So if we go to the different situations that you could use this input on, you'd find out that you can use it in the previous way that we were showing you, like when you want to send tokens, for example, and then you have the 4 components, or you can just use it adding an address, very simple. You can use it in a way in which, for example, in this case, you're repaying a loan. So in this case, you're replacing the maximum with the repay all. And this is very convenient because you're able to just switch this component up here based on your needs. You don't need to add something here like a maximum. You're able to customize this if you're either paying a loan, if you're either setting up a max, if you're either lending to someone, let's say, participating in a LP, whatever it is. And that's the cool thing about it, I would say. Then there's another way that you can actually use this by adding a button here. So let's say this is actually not an input. This is more or less a component which just tells you how many addresses you have delegated to. But you can use the same approach because in here you're able to see that you've delegated 12 addresses, and then you have a button here which manage it. And this is a component, a situation in which you have the blockchain address, and let's say you just need a quick button in order to add this to a list. You don't need a specific big button like we have here. So you can even use the place that you were usually using the selector. You can use it as a way to confirm something or add an address to a list. Let's say you're delegating or you're whitelisting or you're doing something different. So very, very useful. And then another important thing of every input is the fact that you want to get the error messages, right? So the success or error messages. So this input allows you to also get that. So let's say the address is valid. You have this popping up in green. Address is valid. So it's very scalable, and that's why we love using it, actually, because it is a very scalable component. Another thing I wanted to show you here is with this input is that you would have different situations. And in this situation right here, you have two options, two inputs, right? So because I'm in the current input, you'd see that the space around it is different. Why? Because we're using a shadow highlight to highlight the fact that the user is currently inputting something in this specific component. The moment that the user goes to the address here, it will automatically switch to this. And then we will eliminate the drop shadow from this one. You can use a drop shadow, you can use color, you can use anything else, but be sure to highlight which input the user is currently working in. Another interesting thing here, which I think that you should do, and I haven't seen a lot of people do this. A lot of people here, they just use, a lot of designers, they just say the next step, preview transaction, right? And they would use this. They would use the preview transaction as disabled until you add the two, until you finish adding the amount and the address, right? But I'm not saying this is bad, if you just want to be able to speed things up, it's fine, do this. But if you have time, there's something that would add more, that would be even better for the user and would add more value to their experience. What you can do is highlight the next action that the user needs to take, right? So right now the amount is not added, right? So what's the next action? Enter amount. After you enter the amount, what's the next action? Enter address. So using this as real estate to be able to add, to be able to signal to the user what they need to do next is a small, just a small detail, but it adds a lot to the experience. And why it adds a lot to the experience is because the user doesn't even know it. They don't even comprehend this, but it goes into the experience. It just adds to this experience, and it just gives you that extra edge in front of, you know, other people, which is not about that. It's not about, you know, being better than other people. It's, in the end, it's about satisfying the user. And I think that this creates, if you have time to add it, will create that extra experience for the user. And they will feel delighted at the end. You know, they would finish using your product and they would have a good experience. So this is actually a very good approach to have. So enough about inputs. I think we should be going to right now to tooltips. And tooltips is an interesting discussion because there are not a lot of players out there who actually use tooltips. I'm not sure why is that. I've asked people around. I assume it's because developers, founders, they are very preoccupied with releasing things very fast and pushing things out. And you can see that because they're very busy all the time and they're designing for people on Discord, you know, like their own community. They get the feedback from the community and then they roll things out really fast to them, which is not, you know, it's not bad. Like, it's good that you're designing for your community. It's good that you're doing things for them. However, adding tooltips is a very good way to actually onboard new users, right? So even if you think like you don't have the time and like, you know, you just like, yeah, maybe I don't have the time to add it. But in the end, the truth is the value that you might get from having users that see those tooltips and educating users throughout the process is 10 times higher than if you would not have those tooltips. What we do when we do usability testings is we test out the flow with two types of users. One of them is, you know, your average DeFi user who knows about the space and knows how to navigate their way around. And what we always try to do is get a user who's interested in the space but doesn't quite yet know all the details about it. Maybe they know how to send a transaction, but they don't know what an LP token is, or they don't know a lot of things, right? So we want to be testing the flow with those two users, because what we also do is we include tooltips throughout the experience. And by seeing them, they always interact with the tooltips. The tooltips are the first thing they go to. And seeing how they interact with the tooltips is actually very inspirational, because it's also seeing how they go through that aha moment and they go like, aha, okay, you know. And one thing that you want to be having is you want to be having new users have that aha moment on your product. You don't want to be having them the aha moment in other products. You want to be having them on your product. And that's what Tooltips allows you to do. You know, it allows you to educate the users. It allows you to have them stick around. It allows you to not have them go in other places to look for the answers. And Tooltips are just an amazing way to do that. And the cool thing about Tooltips is that they don't add cognitive load for the more experienced users, right? Because their discussions are, yeah, how do we do the design so that, you know, we don't kind of add this cognitive load to the experienced users, because you don't want to be having a lot of, you know, do's and don'ts and whatever on the whole platform. So the answer to that is Tooltips. Just have tooltips. It doesn't add any cognitive load. They're in the background. They're always there. No one cares about them. And it's an easy way for new users to get introduced through the product. So what we like to do with tooltips and how we use tooltips, you can see an example here, is that tooltips usually have three components. The normal tooltip will just have a title and the content. And it sometimes, I mean, most of the times it's enough, because you have it just tells you what this tooltip is about, and then this is the content of the tooltip. In this case, your maximum amount of tokens that you can actually use, because these are actually in your wallet balance right now. This is the max amount of DAI that you have in your wallet balance. The other type of tooltip is that when you want to be offering more information that you currently don't have enough real estate inside the tooltip to be exploring. So let's say there's more things like, for example, you want to give users a brief introduction on what an LP token is. And then at the end, you're like, okay, this is kind of what it is. Do you want to know more about it? And the user will be like, yeah, why not? So this is where you need to click in order to get more information about it, which takes them to your wiki page. What we like to do with tooltips is like, you just hover over it, pops this up, that's it, And an interesting thing about tooltips, and I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people they use tooltips, a lot of designers like this. And it's not enough, I would say. Some users just use it like this. It's not enough. Why is it not enough? Because we've seen in usability tests that users don't see it. They don't see it, especially when the whole icon is one color. And what we like to do here at Ultim is like we try to make a contrast. So by making a contrast of the eye inside the icon and a circle around it being different, you attract the attention more. It's not very, you don't attract the attention too much like that, really screams at you from an experienced user, but it's there, you kind of see it. It's a good approach for the user experience. So be sure to make this contrast between the eye and what we have here in the background. It's quite, users would see that. Also for designers, very important to, whenever you're working with tooltips or with other components, be sure to use the auto layout feature. So in the auto layout feature here, I won't go too much into it. You can see, if you're working with Figma, you will be able to see this. But whenever let's say you're doing a prototype and you have 20 tooltips, it's very easy to scale this, because by using auto layout, the text that you add inside the tooltip automatically resizes itself. The component automatically resizes itself based on the text that you add, and it automatically resizes itself based on whether you have a button inside of it or not. So auto layout is very important if you're working in Figma or if you're working with tooltips. Very important. So let's move forward. So we've spoken about inputs, we've spoken about tooltips. I just want to speak about transactions right now. So as we know, transactions are, they're different than, your regular design. You actually need to sign a transaction in Web 3.0, which for the inexperienced user would feel, what do I need to do? Why are they asking me that? What is a wallet? All these different questions. So what is kind of the best way to do that, right? So in our case right here, let's say we want to be sending tokens. So we have the amount, the address, we add them both, and then we have the preview transaction. Takes us to a new model, and in this model, it just gives you a confirmation of the different transactions that of the different actions that you're going to take, right? So you have the action of sending a token, the amount that you're going to send, and then the address that you're going to send to. This is confirming the transaction. When you're confirming this, it's going to be going into a period in which there's going to be a loading wheel. And what will happen here is that you would need to sign a transaction in your wallet. And that's why it's saying waiting for confirmation, is giving the user feedback that they need to wait for the confirmation, that the system is actually waiting for the confirmation. And then afterwards, after you finish that, you're going to see the snack bar appearing on the right, and it's going to be saying sending tokens, and then token sent, and you're able to dismiss it. So basically that's the whole flow. And this is kind of a very basic flow. You would see a lot of cases that designers overcomplicate this. Like they're gonna just do it like in totally different ways, totally different, like adding so much friction for the user. This is a basic flow. Like if you want to have an approach to do it, this is a good approach. Using modals and having a confirmed transaction, and then waiting for confirmation, right? However, there are certain situations in which you might be overcomplicating the user's journey, and we're going to be speaking a bit about that right now. So in this specific situation, you're going to see we have preview transaction, and then it just takes you to the preview modal and then confirm. But there might be situations in which you're actually adding friction to this process. And why is that? Is because if we look here, we can see the fact that you actually have what you need to see. You see the action, sending tokens, you see the amount that you're adding, you see the address. All you need to do is confirm the transactions. You don't kind of need to, see anything, because you already have everything here. So in this specific case, you're adding too much friction for the user. You should directly take him to actually confirming the transaction. However, there might be situations in which you actually need to add a lot of stuff, a lot of data that actually changed based on what you input here. Let's say you're taking out a loan, let's say you're repaying something, and you need to see collateral that's been updated. You need to see which pool you're going to, the different addresses that might be affected. How's your balance looking after you've repaid? So you might need to see different stuff, and you might not have enough real estate to add it here. So in that case, it actually makes sense to have either another modal right here, which gives you that information, or you can actually have this modal and split it into two parts, right? You have this part and then this part right here. This is for input, and this would be for reviewing and giving you, that extra information that you might need before confirming the transaction. So whatever it is, based on your needs, you could use either of these two approaches. But what I want to highlight is that don't focus too much on, try to make sure that you're not adding friction to the user experience where no friction is needed. If we go to confirming transaction here, another interesting thing, I don't know if you're aware of it or not as a designer developer, whenever you're in this situation, whenever you have this address where it's truncated, there is one approach that works well, which is hovering over it and just highlighting the full address when you're hovering over this. You can use the same tooltip component. Just make sure you're hovering over it and it's highlighting this. And then another thing very quickly I want to make sure you understand here. So don't be afraid to use, I think it's a good practice to actually use interactive buttons, because sometimes you're waiting for confirmation, but you don't want to have like the whole screen go black and having a loading wheel appear there, like how certain experiences are. So in order to avoid that, a thing that you can do is actually use the button as an interactive component, meaning that as soon as you confirm it, the button becomes inactive, and then on the left side you're going to have a spinning wheel, which actually gives the users the feedback that it's loading, we're waiting for your confirmation, you need to sign the transaction. And it's all very natural, it's all very organic, it's not breaking the experience in any way. So I think this is like making the button interactive, it's a good way to do it. After the transaction has been signed, you would go to where you previously were on the page, and you're gonna have the sending your tokens pop up from the right side. This is like a snack bar. And then you're gonna have also a wheel here. You can have these components, like it's very easy to have these two components throughout your design, either static like this because this is confirmed, or this being loading. One thing that I like to do here is that I've seen a lot of designers do things like performing transaction in the background. I like to say things like very naturally, like, what are you doing? I'm like sending tokens right now. Okay, we're sending your tokens. What are you doing? I'm borrowing. Like, just make it as natural as possible for the user. Don't add things like transaction pending in the background or stuff like that, because it's just not natural. You want to have people, you want to have that natural aspect to the experience and make it natural. So I think that's a good way to do it. So I hope you got good lessons from this. I hope you've learned some stuff. Don't forget to like and subscribe in case you want to have more and you want to see more content like this. Leave me a comment or send me a message telling me like what you want to be learning next, what you want to be knowing about regarding design in DeFi. Feel free to message me about that. I really, really hope that you got value from this. And see you in the next episodes.